All right, good deal. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's a month of service presentation of property taxes, exemptions, and payment options. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the a month of service collaboration. But also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and also on behalf of our presenting partner with the Harris Central Appraisal District and the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. We have Ms. Mabel Menifee, who will be presenting on behalf of HCAT, and I'm sorry, Shay Pinkowski, who will be presenting on behalf of the Tax Assessor Collector's Office. But also included in our partnership, we also have the Texas Legal Services Center, Lone Star Legal Aid, the Earl Carl Institute, and Houston Volunteer Lawyers. And together we make up a month of service. And what a month of service is the collaboration of all of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis and offering a variety of different workshops, resources, and information to the community relative to asset building, asset protection, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. We decided to collaborate several years ago in an effort to reach more people, to create a larger impact, and and kind of pool a lot of our initiatives and resources together in an effort to try to reach again more people and be a little bit more impactful, considering that we all service the same communities. So this platform has allowed us the opportunity to reach even more people, not only within the city of Houston and Harris County, but also in surrounding counties and across the entire state of Texas, even. So we want to thank you all for joining us for this presentation for today. This is actually the last one for the year, and we will be coming back next year, hopefully with some more and even better presentations that we've had in the past. We are again planning for 2026 and are open for suggestions and would love to hear the feedback from all of you guys to know that if there's some particular topic that we have not addressed or something that you want more or less of, if you would please, you know, reach out to us and let us know. There's going to be a brief little survey that pops up, or a link for a survey that pops up on the screen following the meeting. And if you all could be so grateful to just kind of give us a quick tidbit, give us your opinion, your feedback. That will be great for us to know as we're planning in the future. So again, we want to welcome you all and thank you all for joining us today. This is your opportunity to ask questions that you may have. We know that many of you should have already received your 2025 tax bill for this year so far. So we're going to get into a lot of details about that. You have the opportunity to ask questions. Unmute yourself at the end of the presentation and ask directly, or you can type your question into the chat on the bottom, and we'll be monitoring the chat and going over the questions at the end of the presentation as well. If you are joining us on social media or on our platforms, do know that you also have the opportunity to type your question into the comment section, and I'll make sure that the question gets addressed at the end of the presentation as well. Do know that we are on a public platform, that we are streaming live. So we do ask that you keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can. We want to try to protect your privacy as best as we possibly can. So we don't want your personal detailed information getting out there for everybody to have access to. So please be mindful of that. But again, we do encourage you to ask questions that someone will be monitoring the chat, and and addressing your issues for you. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with our introductions of Ms. Shay Pinkowski. Let have you go first, and then Ms. Mabel will have you introduce, and then you can go on into your presentation. So Shay?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
There we go. All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shay Pinkowski, and I'm with the Office of Annette Ramirez, who is our Harris County Tax Assessor Collector. I'll hopefully be able to give you guys some information about your upcoming bills, some new information that you may not be aware of, and some clarification for any questions that y'all might have I'm super excited to be here and be able to speak with all of you. But if you have any questions, please feel free. This is a good time to do so. They'll be able to answer questions that are posted into the chat at the end. But I'll go ahead and pass this along. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Ms. Mabel.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mabel Menifee. I'm with the Harris Central Appraisal District, and I am thrilled to be here this afternoon. Also happy that probably a lot of your questions have to do with the tax office this time of year and not necessarily with HCAD. However, we're here to answer as much as we can, and I am going to share my screen now if I get a moment to, but I did want to also mention to you that, hold on a second, it's not, that also joining me from HCAD this afternoon is my colleague, Alicia Kellum. Alicia is a senior customer resolution specialist here at HCAD. So as I am providing you with information, she can answer questions in the chat for you if you have any specific questions about the presentation or any questions relating to your HCAD values and property taxes. So I'm going to do this one more time, and hopefully this one will actually, okay, hold on. I know what I have to do.
Got it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, there we go. There we go. And draw.
Again, just a reminder, please feel free to type your questions into the chat, and we will make sure that those get addressed at the end, even
Now,
though someone is monitoring. Um, some of the questions will be addressed in the chat. However, I do like to go over them at the end so that way, in case somebody's not looking at the chat or those folks that are joining us on our social media channels, that they can hear the questions that are being asked because they can't see or don't have access to the chat.
all right, so are you guys able to see it now?
No, ma'am. You have to hit the share.
Okay. Hold on. Okay.
Hey, go back to the Zoom, then hit the share.
There. All right.
And it's coming up. We're on the Zoom. Open your document on the
It should be open, but let's, okay, all right.
when you did the share screen, did you pick the Zoom or did you pick your presentation?
I picked the presentation.
Okay. Yep, that's it. You see it.
You see it, and now all I need to do is do slideshow
Correct.
and
And from the beginning.
then display settings, or can you guys see it?
No, so swap view. Nope, swap view.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
ma'am.
There you
Yep,
go.
you're good to
All right.
go.
Okay, sorry guys. I always do one misstep in this thing.
That's all right. Everybody got a quick lesson in how to do
How
it.
to do a Zoom, how to start a share in a Zoom presentation. All right, so again, we're going to do a quick overview on property taxes and exemptions. Um, I do appreciate if for those of you who've joined us for a second or third time in any of our presentations, I certainly appreciate you being here again, and hopefully I can provide you with some additional insight, as well as just some additional items that you might find of interest. And those of you are here for the first time, welcome. Please feel free. As I said, my colleague Alicia Kellum is in the chat room. If you have any specific questions about what I'm about to talk about, feel free to put them in the chat, or at the end of the presentations, we will have an open session for you to ask those questions. Okay, so just a little bit about HCAD first before we get into um, some of the more important details, but I did want to just kind of mention, I think everybody knows, but it always never hurts to sort of restate one of the reasons property taxes are play a little bit more of an outsized role here in Texas is because we don't have a state income tax here. Uh, the local services that you receive, whether that's trash pickup, firemen, police protection, as well as your schools, etc., a large part of that funding comes from your local property taxes. Um, the laws for property taxes are not necessarily set at the local level. We'll talk about exemptions in a minute. Most of those are, but the way property taxes are collected, as well as some of the rules that surround them, are part of the Texas Property Tax Code, and those originate with your legislature up in Austin. And one of the government oversight committees that sort of looks over the shoulder of all central appraisal districts, of which there is one in each county. One of the government agency that has oversight is the comptroller's office. So just a little bit of background there. A lot of the information that you find on our website in terms of forms and things can also be found at the comptroller's website. The role of what we do in terms of what the central appraisal districts were established to do is to value all of the county property, residential, commercial, agricultural, whether it's industrial or whether it's business personal. Appraisal districts uh, are required to value that property each year in terms of what its market value is, what it would sell for on the open market. And that has to be done as of January the 1st of each year. So whatever the condition of the property is on January the 1st, that is how the value is determined. We also, a big job here at HCAT is that we administer exemptions. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but exemptions are essentially what certain homeowners can qualify for in terms of discounts on their property taxes. We also do something, we certify the appraisal rolls, which basically means once that value has been established, we provide an appraisal roll to all of the taxing jurisdictions that this is the market value of all the property in the county. And that is how they take a look at that, and that's how they set their rates for the coming year, taking a look at their budget and all. So we also are designed to keep the system fair. In other words, um, we provide the role of setting the market value, and so that you don't have all of those taxing jurisdictions that you pay to doing their own rolls, which can be a bit of a problem, particularly when something's wrong and you need to go to each one and get it straightened out. So you come to one central agency, which is your appraisal district. We are also overseen locally. Each appraisal district has a chief appraiser. And here in Harris County, as well as some of the larger counties, we have a 9-member administrative board of directors. Quick look at why certain things have deadlines each year. As I said, it's appraised each year. The jurisdictions need to set their values based on those appraisals each year. So that is why we have certain deadlines. January 1st, I mentioned already, is the date of appraisal. And then, of course, May 15th, once you receive HCAT's annual value notices, you have until May 15th usually to file a protest or file an appeal, as some might call it, to try and get your value changed. If that protest is, you always have that 30-day from the date of notice to file that protest, if in fact it comes a little bit later, so that you not so as not to be able to meet the May 15th deadline. And of course, this is a time of year when in the fall tax bills are mailed from those taxing jurisdictions. In Harris County, most of the billing and collection is handled by your local tax assessors. Well, all of it, and not HCAT. One misconception people often have is that HCAT also bills them. We do not. We simply provide the value. And then of course those tax bills that you probably have in hand right now, if they are not paid by February the 1st, then they become delinquent and penalties and interest begins to accrue. So we're required to do that appraisal at 100% of market value, as I've mentioned before. Um, how does anyone know if we're doing our job or not? That's usually done by the state. Each year they do their own market value studies of central appraisal districts like ours to make sure that we are in compliance with that, uh, with the, and doing those correctly in terms of market value. We do this by a process called mass appraisal. And it's important to remember that the value on your property, is derived based on the sales that take place within your neighborhood, usually with similar properties. So in Harris County, we have about 1.9 million parcels that we value each and every year. And we also serve over 500 taxing jurisdictions. You, of course, may not pay to more than 3, 4, 5 of those, but depending on where you live, you pay to different jurisdictions. This is a copy of that annual value notice. If you're a homeowner and you've been so for a while, you know what this looks like. You know that each year you get something called an I-file number. So whenever you get ready to protest your taxes, or um, you may have other business, that I-file number is always an important thing to have on file, to have with you. And remember, it's a unique number to your account. One other thing I did want to point out for a lot of folks is that when you get that bill, you're going to have something called your appraised value as well as your market value. Keep in mind, the appraised value is what your taxes are going to be based on, and that could be different from the market value. The market value is what HCAT sets. The appraised value is what your taxes are figured upon, calculated on, because in most cases, it's going to include your exemptions if you have those, and other things. But typically, it's going to be your exemptions that will be in there for that. Another thing, common misconception, uh, is it's important to also remember that your protest is based on the market value, not the appraised value. So when you come in to appeal, you will be appealing that market value rate. And as I mentioned before, just a little bit of additional information about the appraised values. Number used in calculating the tax bill, as I said before, and it could be lower because of those exemptions. And then included as part of the exemptions, if you have the homestead, is that 10% appraisal cap, which doesn't allow your value to go up more than 10% annually. Could be lower than 10%. Your value could actually decline in some cases, but it will never go up more than 10% in any given year because of that appraisal cap, increased cap. I mentioned the market value. What is the market value? That's the value at which a property would sell for to a willing buyer on the open market. So it's important to remember that it's going to be a willing buyer. It may not necessarily include certain transactions, such as selling to a relative, or perhaps in some cases a foreclosure. But and HCAT's primary role is, again, to establish that market value. So let's talk a little bit about exemptions. What are they? Of course, I mentioned them earlier. They do save you money. That's a tax reduction or elimination in some cases for property owners who are eligible for that. And of course, HCAT administers those. And it's important. One thing I always love to point out to people is that the Texas Property Tax Code is a little over 600 pages, and probably say about that thick, and exemptions cover about that much of it. So uh, we have a number of specialists that can help help with determining exemptions, but they do exempt a portion of the property's value from taxation, and that is usually, when we're talking about a homestead exemption, that is just on your primary residence only. A lot of people ask, can they have more than one property, exemptions on more than one property? And the answer for the most part is no. It's only based on the property that you own and occupy. So what are some of the common exemptions that you as a homeowner can get? So the most common ones are that I mentioned the general resident homestead exemption. There is something else called an over 65 exemption, which is an add-on once you turn over 65 to your general resident homestead exemption. There's the over 55 surviving spouse exemption, disability, and there are several disabled veterans and veterans exemptions. There are also some service-related exemptions for first responders and the like. So just the general resident homestead exemption. Hopefully, I'm talking to the wind right now because I'm sure everyone listening to this has their general resident homestead exemption on the home that they own and occupy as their primary residence. So let this be a reminder to just share this information with some of your neighbors so that, believe it or not, there are people who do not have this who are eligible for it for any number of reasons. But the only thing we need to establish that is we've got an application online, and you would simply need to provide your proof of ownership along with a copy of your driver's license that where the address on the driver's license matches that of the property. Again, you get that 10% appraisal increase cap, and you also get, by state law, a $140,000 school tax exemption. And that basically means, apologies, everyone, I have one of those automatic light turn off things. And if I don't move for a certain period of time, my lights go off. So we're back in light now. As I mentioned before, $140,000 school tax exemption by state law. And that means every appraisal district in Texas has to offer that. Every school district has to offer that. Basically, that means if your home is worth 304, say $340,000, well, $340,000, then you will only be paying, your taxes are only going to be based on 200,000 of that value. So that knocks off a significant portion of your tax liability. The other exemptions, depending on where you live, you may get the city of Houston, Harris County, number of other local jurisdictions offer some significant uh, um, reductions by having exemptions. Some others maybe do not, but it depends on the city, county, or the special district where you live. Then there's the over 65 and disability exemption, which I mentioned is an add-on to the general resident homestead exemption, or you could say that you qualify for this exemption for the year that you turn 65, for the entire year that you turn 65. So if you're turning 65 December 30th, then you qualify for this additional exemptions for this year for the taxes you are about to pay. The disability exemption is similar to the over 65, that you qualify for the year that you become eligible to receive those disability exemptions, either through Social Security or through some people may not be disabled and they may not be receiving Social Security. So you can provide us with a physician statement. We have a form, a physician statement on our website that you can take to the doctor and they can fill it out and send it to HCAD. So what are some of the additional benefits? They are the $140,000 exemption on the that you had been receiving on the general resident homestead exemption goes up to $200,000. So you get an additional $60,000 off. You're also eligible for something called a school tax ceiling or school or freeze or limitation. There's several names for it. It basically means that you the year that you turn 65, whatever your school taxes were that year for that particular property, they are frozen at that amount. They can never go up. Um, they can go down if your value falls. The only time they will go up is if you add some additional value to the home, like you add some square footage, building an extra room, or you add something fancy in the back, like a swimming pool or a tennis court. So the other important piece of having that over 65 disability too is that you're eligible for something called a tax deferral, which my colleague from the county is going to talk a little bit more about once I'm done. And you can pay your taxes in installments without penalties. It's called a quarterly payment system. And then there are other individual exemptions that may be granted by jurisdictions where you live. Again, that just sort of depends on where you live in the county. The over 55 surviving spouse exemption is one that the spouse would qualify for if the surviving spouse would qualify for, excuse me, if the spouse that did qualify for it died in a year that they were over 65 and already eligible for it. The surviving spouse does have to be 55 years of age or older on the date of the deceased spouse death. And then you would receive all of the over 65 exemption benefits. That includes the school tax ceiling would continue. And by the way, it is transferable to another residence. There, based on the value, there may be some recalculation, but you would still be able to take advantage of having your value frozen. And again, it provides for the tax deferral and the opportunity to pay taxes in installments. There is something called the immediate resident homestead exemption for those of you who are brand new homeowners or considering buying a home. This allows you to begin to receive your tax deductions, not the following year of beginning in January the 1st, but a prorated amount beginning in the month that you actually purchase and move into the home. And that is prorated on, say if you moved into March, then it would be based on 9 months. You would continue to, so you would get that. And if the one exception, the primary exception, I should say, to that is that if the home was previously owned and that owner was receiving exemptions, those exemptions are likely to remain, most likely, will remain on the property for the following year till the end of the year. So you would still benefit from whatever exemptions were already on the property. So as you can see, that is designed for homes that have been previously lived in. The immediate resident homestead exemption particularly is important for people who are buying a new home or where the previous owner had no exemptions. So they definitely want to take advantage of that. It's very important that you do. I did want to talk a little bit about the airship exemption because I know this one always tends to generate a number of questions. The airship exemption is for an individual who may be living in air property. And what is air property? It's where there's been no clear title left to one individual. It may be owned by by a group of siblings. So say if there were 4 siblings that their parents passed away and left the home to, then they each have a 25% interest in the property. Now, what happens with that is that if the individual is living there previously and they had only 25% interest in the property, then they might have only qualified for 25% of the exemption because that's all they could get because there were no other heirs in the property to qualify. Now, by filling out our application, and when you get to section 3 on our homestead application, there is a section that if you check yes, then that triggers a number of other things that can help you, the person living in the property, to receive 100% of the exemptions. Because after all, you're the person living there. You may have siblings that have their homestead exemptions in their own homes someplace else. So you would have the opportunity since you're taking care of the property, living there, maintaining it, you'd have the opportunity to get that 100% exemption. So if I encourage you, if you find yourselves in that situation, to take advantage of this if at all possible. There's certain things that you would need to do, um, including providing an affidavit establishing the interest in the property, death certificate of the previous owner, copy of the utility bill, just to make sure that someone is in fact living there, and any citation of court records relating to your ownership interest. I do want to say that you also want to contact the other heirs to make sure that they would be on board with that. And it's important for them to know and for you to remember that by receiving this heirship exemption, it in no way affects the ownership rights that the other co-owners have to the property. It simply gives you that financial break, which allows you to take better care of it, and so forth. Veterans exemptions. There are a number of veterans exemptions that you can take it, that our veterans can take advantage of, and that includes a total VA exemption. As you can see here, a disabled veterans exemption for the surviving spouse, disability transfer, veteran survivors exemptions. And if you have any questions about these, then I encourage you to call us at HCAD, because we do have a dedicated line for veterans who are interested in claiming those exemptions. If they for eligible veterans who want to claim those exemptions, please feel free to give us a call. So how do you apply for them? Easily. We've got forms on our website. You can print off, fill out, and mail in. Many of them are you can fill out online and email them in. Scan if you're applying for, say, a homestead exemption. Scan a copy of your driver's license, and if you are a co-owner, so you're a married couple, it's important to make sure that you send in copies of both marriage licenses. Otherwise, we would not be able to give you the full exemption. We need to have copies of both driver's license, both owners. If you have any questions about that, and try to submit everything at once, because typically we can get this back to you between 30 and 60 days to make sure that it's applied before you do it in the spring, to make sure it's applied before the tax bills are generated, so you don't have to wait on a refund. If you have any questions about that, we do have a video on our website once you go into the forms that will basically walk you through the process of filling out the forms. We also have on our website other additional videos that explain a number of functions that the district does that you might find helpful. So I encourage you to visit our website. I also want to warn folks about something that typically happens, but if you're a new homeowner, especially, you may get a solicitation in the mail saying that they can get you a designation of a homestead, or they're offering to apply for you for the homestead exemption. Please remember that acquiring this exemption costs you no money as a homeowner. Just simply go to the HCAD website or fill it out, and it is absolutely free. You do not have to pay to receive the exemption. This is just an annual exemptions confirmation card. In addition to that value notice that you receive annually from us, if you have exemptions, you're going to receive this annual confirmation card, which just verifies the exemptions that are already on your account. If anything has changed, this is your opportunity to please let us know, so that we can remove those exemptions, because you don't want to be receiving exemptions you're no longer eligible for. The Texas law considers that fraud, and they can actually go back, I believe it's about 5 years worth, to charge you for any back taxes that you may owe as a result of having exemptions that you were not eligible for. So when you get this card, everything's kosher, nothing's changed, you can just kind of throw it in the drawer. If something has changed, then please notify us as soon as you can, as soon as possible for that year. And then if you don't get it for some reason, and you used to getting it, or you feel like you haven't gotten it, maybe it's a good idea. It could be a good idea to contact us and just, or go out and check to make sure that your exemptions are still in place. Because what happens is when this card is mailed, it cannot be forwarded. If it can't get to the addressee on the postcard, it comes back to HCAD, in which case we'll do some additional checking. But if we're unable to verify that you still live in that home, then those exemptions could roll off in a bit. So just be aware of that. This is what our website looks like at www.hcad.org. As I mentioned before, under forms here on that second blue line at the top, is where all of our forms are. The popular forms, which include exemptions, are out there. We have a number of the properties attached search here on the left-hand side is where you can go to make sure your exemptions are still in place. And then, of course, help is what you can pull down to access some of those videos that I mentioned. You can also make appointments online if you want to come out to HCAD for customer service. You don't have to, but some people prefer making that so they know exactly what time to show up and not have to wait. Okay, so I also wanted to mention to you just quickly, I showed the exemptions amounts on the slides I showed you earlier, but you notice that you receiving a tax break this year, one of the reasons your taxes could be lower is because certain constitutional amendments that were passed in November. One includes the homestead exemption, which was increased to 140,000 from 100,000, which it's set at for the last several years. And then, of course, the over 65 and disability, which was increased to actually to 200,000, up to 200,000, and you can use that, and that's one of the ways that you save money. Also, the over 65 and disability SB2 included adding that 10,000, and these are effective for the tax year 2025. So, if you have a homestead exemption, your exempted amount for school taxes is 140,000. If you have an over 65, your exempted amount for this year is 200,000. So I would like to just kind of share with you our contact information. We're out on the Northwest Freeway, and our phone number, general phone number, you can reach folks in various departments, is 713-957-7800. Our website again, there's the address, and you can also reach us online at hcad.org/contact-us-form. So you can reach us in a number of ways. And also, I did want to, at this time, turn it over to my colleague down at the tax office. And I just wanted to, but before I do, I did want to share with you, for those of you, once your tax bill comes out in usually, I'm not your tax bill, excuse me, but your valuation notices from HCAT comes out, and usually around late March through April. Uh, we do hold a series of protest workshops in the spring, all over the city. They usually start in mid-March and go through May. Sorry, that's covered up. But they allow you to learn the ins and outs of protesting your property value, if that is what you feel like you should do. And you get that from HCAT experts. And I say experts because you get to chat with the appraisers and the analysts who actually do the work. You can see how property values are trending in your neighborhood. And if you are interested, or you know you have a group or civic club that might be interested in having one of those workshops in that area, because we kind of like to spread them out throughout the county, feel free to contact me. And if you can do it by mid-March, we can certainly do our best to get you on the calendar. So with that, I would like to thank you all again, and I'm going to turn it over to Shay from the tax office.
Hi, Ms. Mabel. Thank you. So I just wanted to To go ahead and start here, let me get my screen up on the board here. All right, can everyone see me okay?
Mhm. Yep.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Okay, so hi everyone. In case you weren't here when I introduced myself, my name is Shay Pinkowski, and I'm here with the Office of Annette Ramirez in our Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. I know a lot of you have questions about property taxes, how you're going to pay them, how that process works. So we'll just dive right in. We did this past year have our new tax assessor collector voted in. So Miss Annette Ramirez, she is a wealth of knowledge. She has a lot of really great information and ideas of how to make things run a bit smoother. So, we're super excited with all the changes that she's made. But if you wanted to know a bit about her, we have her information here. One of the main goals of the property tax assessor's office is collecting property taxes for the jurisdictions that we collect for, in addition to registering vehicles, processing title transfers, and other motor vehicle services such as, handicap placards, your specialty license plates with special designs on them, as well as maintaining voter rolls for registered voters. So we do a lot of different things in this office, but they do have a lot of information, and what I'm going to talk about today is the property tax aspect of that. So as an overview, the Harris County Tax Office maintains the information for approximately 1.7 million tax accounts, and that number depends on how many tax accounts are occurring every year. It continuously goes up, so we just keep growing as a county. So we're bound to see more people, more tax accounts, and more information popping up. Those 1.7 million accounts collect over $8 billion in property taxes each year. And those property taxes get distributed to the jurisdictions that collect taxes in order to maintain their operations and the special needs that they adhere to. So we pay property taxes for Harris County, the Houston ISD, City of Houston, flood control, along with other things like there's some MUDs, emergency services districts, and as well as some PIDs. So you see a lot of different reasons and a lot of different things listed on your property taxes. And part of that is because we don't just collect for one taxing jurisdiction, we collect for over 80. So property tax law changes, Ms. Mabel did touch on this a bit in regards to all the new values for exemptions and how those have changed with this past November election. One of which, as she mentioned before, for school districts, the general homestead exemption did increase from $100,000 to $140,000, and this does help a lot of folks that have, that homestead exemption on their property, and it does reduce the taxes for their school district. But a lot of questions arise with, you expect it to affect every single jurisdiction, every single collection that is on your property tax bill, and that's not necessarily the case. That is specifically for your school district. Similarly, for those who have a homestead and over 65 on their property, the school district also increased their exemption for the disabled homestead exemption from $10,000 to $60,000. So that has been increased as well. And then there have been some exemption qualifications that have changed for surviving spouses of veterans with service-connected passing. So those are all some really exciting changes that happened this past year. So you'll hear a lot about it, but one of those things to keep in mind is that those are pertaining to the school, not to all of your tax bills. So you'll still see your normal exemptions decided by each specific jurisdiction for everything else, for your Harris County, for any MUDs you might have, things like that. They will all decide on their own exemptions per jurisdiction. So for those who are not super familiar with how tax bills are calculated, just a really quick breakdown of how those calculations happen. So that taxable value that's determined by the appraisal district is what we use to calculate your taxes. That's after exemptions have been removed. That's after the valuations have been decided by the appraisal district and put into that roll, we multiply those values by your tax rate. Now, every jurisdiction that I mentioned earlier, all those 80 plus jurisdictions that we collect for, every single one of them determines their own tax rate. They all determine what their tax rate is going to be for the year depending on what their maintenance and operations are, and they have meetings in order to decide these things. So we take that tax value and multiply it by the tax rate of each one of those separately, and that's how we collect, or that's how we determine what the calculations for your tax bills are. So if you're ever wondering, why is it this number? Why does it look like this? This is how we come to that number. So that's for, your own knowledge for whenever you're looking at your property tax bill. Speaking of property tax bills, this is what our property tax bill looks like. The top section up here, I'm not sure if you can see my arrow or not, but this top section up here is the section which will display which jurisdictions we collect for, along with any exemptions that are applicable, what the tax rate is for this year, and the information pertaining to that. It'll also list your exemptions down here in this little box, which will display which exemptions are applicable to this particular account, your information, of course, the account number, and then down here is where you would see how much you owe for that bill. It also lists any previous tax years owed. So if you're delinquent on previous tax years, if you have a deferral, if you have any of that information will be displayed down here so that you're able to see how much of the bill is for this particular year and then how much might be for delinquent taxes. That bottom section here under payment coupon, this section is what you would submit in if you were making a payment to us by mail through a check. Alternatively, if you prefer to come into a branch office and pay for it in person, this section down here is the one that will have your information for your property taxes. It'll have your property tax account along with the address. And of course, it'll show us Ms. Annette Ramirez's name here in case you decide to mail this in. But this is where you'll have that information and what you can bring in if you were to choose to pay in person. So with that exciting new exemption, here's just a quick visual representation of what that would look like and how that would affect your property taxes for this upcoming year. So these are all numbers based off of a property valued at $400,000. So as you can see, without any exemptions, without any changes to the property value, the tax bill is approximately $8,500. And while that does sound like quite a bit, it is because of the value. Not all properties are valued at $400,000 in Harris County, but it is a good average. With your homestead exemption, when you have the homestead exemption on that property, you live and own and reside in that property, those taxes go down. You end up saving about $2,917. The tax bill would be reduced to $5,583. And then, as you can see, there's quite a big difference because of these new exemptions and the increases that we've gone through for your homestead and over 65 residents. Your tax savings end up being closer to $7,000 nearly. So it's $6,984, and you end up seeing a bill that's closer to $1,516. Now, this is all, of course, going to depend on, these are all just flat numbers. They're not including any ceilings in this matter. They're not including any kind of caps. This is just flat numbers as they are. So your bill might look a little different. You'll always want to check and make sure that you're seeing the correct amounts and on your statements, just to make sure that you are aware of what your taxing responsibilities are. So for taxing limitations, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we like to call them tax ceilings, or you'll occasionally hear someone refer to it as a tax freeze. And what this does is it limits the increase of your property taxes that we can collect for on your school taxes. Remember, again, this is for school district specific. This is not for all across the board, every tax that gets applicable to this property. But this applies to homesteads of property owners who are over the age of 65 or disabled. And it essentially caps the amount that we are able to collect on your property taxes based off of when you acquired that over 65 and homestead exemption and what that limitation was on your property taxes. So the first year that you have that over 65 exemption, that's your value. That's where you're capped at. The following year, you would see, even if your calculations would require you to pay, say, for instance, $1,000, if the previous year for your school taxes, you paid $900, you would not pay over $900 on your school tax, even if the calculations would normally require you to pay $1,000. That cap assists folks in that getting those reductions to your taxes in order to, help everyone maintain their home when they're over the age of 65 and living in their homestead or are disabled. So just in case you were wondering what a tax limitation is or what that refers to, that's what it is referring to. And again, it is for your school district. It is not all across the board. And it does not necessarily mean that you would pay a zero balance due. So it's just going to depend on your property, how long you've lived there, what your exemptions are like, and how long you've had those on your property. Another option that's really great for our over 65 folks or disabled persons living in their homestead or disabled veterans for that matter is called a tax deferral. Now, a tax deferral we like to refer to as more of an insurance. It is not a requirement. You are not automatically granted it. It is something you have to apply for, but it is in order to assist you in postponing your property taxes due. Meaning, these taxes are still required to be paid. You are still owing these taxes. It is an amount that is owed in order to pay your property taxes. However, it gives you an indefinite amount of time in which to pay these property taxes with a significantly lower interest rate of 5% per year. When you're owing these taxes, they still do appear on your bill. You will still see your statement come in, and it will show you how much the taxes are for, and whether they're for previous years or current. And they do assist in keeping your property away from foreclosure or tax sale. But as I mentioned before, they are not a cancellation of taxes. Those taxes are still owed. You are still required to pay for those property taxes, but it gives you an indeterminate amount of time in which to pay until you are no longer the owner of that home, whether it is yourself passing away, whether you are transferring it into the ownership of someone else, whether you're selling it, whatever the case may be. Once that property is no longer in your name, that deferral is no longer active, it's no longer valid. So when it gets removed, all the taxes that you owed previously with that 5% interest can be collected at the rate that they are for 181 days from the date that deferral is removed. After the 181 days, those property taxes are going to be owed in the amount that they are for the penalty and interest that would have been assessed had they not been under a deferral. So if you do have a property tax deferral, it is a really great tool to help a lot of folks out. But make sure that your next of kin know. Make sure that if you're selling the property that you let them know that you have a tax deferral so that we are able to give you the computation of how much those taxes will be in order to help avoid those additional penalty and interest fees that kick in after those 181 days. Quarterly payment plans are something that is also available to our over 65 disabled homeowner and disabled veteran homeowners. There was a question in the chat about this, but I wanted to go into it a little bit further over the course of the presentation, just because it is a bit easier to understand when hearing it as opposed to reading it. And there's a lot of different situations that can occur with any kind of payment plan that we have. But for this one particularly, quarterly payment plans are available for the homeowners over the age of 65, disabled homeowners, or disabled veteran homeowners and their surviving spouses. Meaning, you do have to have that exemption on the property in order for this payment plan to be available to you. You may be in the process of applying for that over 65 exemption and getting that onto your account, and that's well and good. Unfortunately, we aren't able to put a quarterly payment plan on an account that is not set to be either that is not as over 65 exemption receiving, disabled homeowner receiving, or disabled veterans or surviving spouses receiving. So just be aware that this is only applicable for those who have this on their account. With quarterly payment plans, there's no interest, no penalty fees, so long as you are paying timely, and those are for equal payments of due at the end of January, March, May, and July. And they are for unpaid taxes. So this upcoming year is going to be the beginning of the next set of quarterly payments because all of them have been completed by now, for the most part, except for an odd exception depending on, ownership changes and things like that. But for most of us, who are over the age of 65, that first quarter of your tax bill that you receive is going to be due here at the end of January. Really easy way to start that quarterly payment plan is just by making your first quarterly payment if it is applicable to you, and you know that you have your over 65, disabled, or disabled veterans exemption on your property. You can go ahead and make your first quarterly payment in the amount of a quarter of whatever your tax bill is due. And when you make that first payment, it enlists you so that you would get coupons in order to receive the other 3 quarterly payments. So just so everyone is aware, you do have to either contact us or let us know that you are requesting a quarterly payment, and you can do so by just adding that information onto the coupon whenever you submit your payment, or if you're coming into a branch office, letting them know there so that they can go ahead and get you set up for that. So in addition to all of the other methods and forms that we have for you to make your payments and to assist in making payments, we also have payment plans. Now, payment plans are not specific to any type of exemption. They are available for everyone. So if you own a business, if you own rental properties, if you have additional lots of just land sitting somewhere, then you are able to have them be placed onto a payment agreement. It's a financial planning tool, meaning that you are able to pay them off early. You are able to continue to make those payment agreements regardless of what the status of the property is. And while this doesn't really take into effect for this past year, 2024, which has already been due since January, when you're doing this on a property that is going to be due, or a property that is here going to be due in 2025, for 2025 taxes, I should say, so long as you make that payment agreement prior to attorneys getting onto the account and prior to collection fees being added, you can avoid those collection fees and foreclosure actions by creating this payment plan. So just keep that in mind. If you are already aware that come end of January you're not going to be able to pay off your taxes completely, then it's not just you yourself that's in this situation. We hear folks about this all the time. So this is in place for that particular situation. When you know you're not going to be able to pay your property taxes in full, we do recommend you pay as much as you can until end of January, of course, when it becomes delinquent, because anything that you pay prior to January, even if it's not the full amount of your taxes, anything that you pay prior to that due date would be applied without penalty and interest. You're just helping yourself in the long run, and by making these payments, you allow yourself to have a little bit more space and time in which to pay with no interest or penalties, so long as you do it before the delinquency date. And then once your account does become delinquent, you can contact us and request for a payment agreement. And once we receive that request and create that payment agreement for you, that's when these new terms come into play, and I'll be able to explain this here in a second. For properties that are not a homestead, no over 65, no homestead, no any kind of exemptions, you're able to make a payment plan up to 12 months. And we don't really do less. If you pay it off early, that's not a problem, but we are able to make a payment plan of 12 months. Your penalty and interest remains the same. You still pay your normal penalty and interest as you would if you were not on a payment agreement. However, it does protect you from those collection fees and those attorney fees that would be adhered to the account otherwise if you were not making those payments and on that payment plan. For homestead properties, this does not have to be a homestead over 65, homestead disabled, homestead disabled veteran. This is just for any property that has a homestead on it. You're able to make a homestead payment plan. And on that homestead payment plan, we are able to do it in either 12, 24, or 36 months. There is a 1% interest per month plus the initial penalty for whenever you create this agreement. So in February, that would set you at 7%. In March, that would set you at 9%, and then it just continues to accrue. So just keep that in mind. The sooner you create this payment agreement, the better off you will be, the less penalty and interest you accrue whenever you do it on a homestead agreement. And this can be for prior and current year taxes currently. If you are already, all of these payments are due at the end of the month. So every payment is due at the end of its month. Now, I will go ahead and put a word out there that for 2025 taxes, If you already have a payment agreement set in place for 2024 or prior years, which are delinquent tax years, um, we are not going to be able to combine all of these payment plans together for 2025. Those will be able to create a payment plan for once this current, or rather these previous delinquent tax years are no longer owing. So once you have paid off that payment agreement that you have currently, then we would be able to create you a new payment agreement to include the current year. So just be aware, like I said before, if you plan on making payments for your 2025 taxes, but you know you're not going to pay them in full, we do recommend whatever payment you're able to make will only help you in the long run. So the more that you pay prior to the delinquency date, the less you'll have to pay on penalty and interest. So just keep that in mind. It is something that you would want to consider whenever you're making your financial plans for this upcoming tax year. We do have several methods of payment that we are able to accept, several ways that you are able to pay, including going onto our website at myharriscountytax.net. Alternatively, if you'd prefer to mail in your payment, you can send in your payment to us by the mail. You can call us by phone and go onto our automated system to make a payment through our IVR, or you can come in person to any of our branch offices and we would be able to accept your payment there as well. Full or partial payments are available through most of these methods, except for by phone. By phone, you would have to make a full payment in order to be able to use that phone system. It's not able to take partials. There are some additional fees depending on what method of payment you're using. So debit cards have a 2.4% fee that is accrued for the full amount that you're paying. Checks, of course, do not have any additional fees, as well as money orders and cashier's checks. If you're paying with an e-check on our website, there's a 50-cent fee. And if you're paying in cash, of course, there's no additional fees, but those cash payments are only going to be available to be made at our branch offices. We don't recommend you sending us checks or cash in the mail, though you are able to send us checks, cashier's checks, or money orders. We are here to help. We have a lot of folks here who are very happy to answer questions, to be able to assist you as best as they can. And of course, I'm here to answer questions as well. But if you need to get a hold of us, we do have our website, which has multiple frequently asked questions listed on there, as well as some information that's just plain and out for everyone available to see. You're also able to search for your accounts and see what your bills are, your statements. So if you don't receive it in the mail, or you're concerned that your mail is getting stolen, or whatever that case may be, you are able to check online and see your statement on there. You can give us a phone call if you'd prefer to give us a call. Our call center is able to answer questions, provide the tax amounts if that's the case that you're looking for, how much you're required to pay, or if you need assistance on calculations for those quarterly payments, you can do those over the phone as well. Or you can email us. You can send us an email to our general message or our general inbox, which is tax.office@hctx.net. And that is it for my presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and check the chat to see if there's any questions in there for me while I have the ability to do so. Okay. So one of the questions that we had on there, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Nia, you wanted to jump on?
Yeah, I was reading over the questions. I was about to review those. But I saw that there were a couple that Alicia had addressed. Someone had asked the question, do you recommend using an outside agency for protesting property taxes to lower your tax values?
So neither
Alicia?
yeah, Alicia had answered that one. But essentially, neither the appraisal district nor the Harris County Tax Office can recommend an agency, or that you use one, or that you do not use one in order to protest your values. But just so everyone is aware, they're not always free. So if you're going to go with an agent, they do more often than not require some form of payment, whether that's in the difference that you would pay for your exemption, which is free. You don't have to pay anything to apply for those.
Another question that was here. If my property is already with a law firm that represents you for a delinquency, is it too late to get transferred back for a payment option?
So I did answer that one earlier, but I'll go ahead and answer it for the group that's on the audio only. And that is, we are still able to create payment agreements for folks who have their payments with, or their payment account with the attorneys already. So once it goes to the attorneys, what happens is you do get those additional assessed fees, as I mentioned in my presentation, which are, your attorney's fees, your court fees, and those still would need to get paid. So if you've already had your account turned over to the attorneys, those fees are still due. You're still required to make those payments. However, if you just need assistance in paying off your property taxes, as in the taxes that are due and the penalty and interest that are due, we're able to assist you in getting those payment agreements set up. But one of the bigger benefits of having a payment agreement is avoiding those fees. So long as you're able to create that payment agreement prior to those attorney's fees being added on there, then you're assisting yourself in the long run, because it's a pretty big difference between not having any attorney's fees and having those attorneys and collection fees on there.
Okay. This is for HCAT. Once a person who has the exemption dies, what is the process for paying the taxes owed that have increased due to the loss of the exemption? In this particular situation, a person dies in April. Would a quarterly payment plan be the option, or
So
deferred
that's actually
payment?
more of that's actually more of a question for the tax office. So Ms. Mabel did answer that a little bit further down. As far as the over 65 exemption, they do remain on the property until the end of the year. So if they passed in April of 2025, then that exemption stays in place until the end of this year for the 2025 taxes. However, when the ownership changes and that property owner is no longer the person who has that over 65 exemption, those quarterly payment plans are in place for our over 65 folks, for our disabled folks, for our homeowners who have that disabled veterans exemption. It's not necessarily in place for the persons who would owe the taxes afterwards.
Okay.
So we are able to create your payment agreement if that's what you're needing to get set up for. It just would not be a quarterly payment plan, because that quarterly payment plan is for the person who is over 65 who has unfortunately passed away.
Another question here. What if I've applied for an exemption and have never received it? What is the process? And does it lower than the tax bill once the exemption is applied?
So I guess I could start answering that. Yeah, you can actually apply for it. If you didn't receive it, there's a chance that maybe you didn't send in all of the information, uh, and they declined it because of that. But you can go ahead and resend it, um, and once it's accepted, you will get the current year as well as the previous 2 years of exemptions. Does that make sense?
But in the meantime, they still need to go ahead and pay the whole bill first and wait to get
Right,
the credit
exactly.
back.
Right. And if
Correct. Until those exemptions get put in place, the bill that you receive and the bill that is available in January is the bill that is due by the end of January. Those exemptions might get put on later on, and of course, if they do, then it gets a reduction to your tax value, which in turn reduces how much you're paying in taxes. You could get a refund after those adjustments have been made, but for the meantime, those property taxes are due in the amount that they were billed to you.
So for those folks, don't wait until you think that you're going to get like a credit or something and only pay a certain amount. The whole thing is due. So in that regards, if a credit does come back, will they still could they potentially still incur penalties if they only pay the portion, if the full thing is not paid
Yes,
by the end of January? Okay.
yes. Even if they get a it's not it's an estimate. Even if they were to estimate the bill or have someone calculate the bill for them, if that bill that they calculated is short, say we anticipated the bill being at $5,000 after the exemptions get placed on, but it was actually 500 or 5,500, you can still get penalized and get penalty and interest collected on that $500 shortage from whenever you paid. You don't get additional time if it gets reduced. You get additional time if it increases. So if you have an exemption on there for this year and that exemption gets removed, then, the bill can go up and you get additional time to pay if the bill goes up, but not if the bill goes down.
Gotcha. Okay. Going back to look, I think those are all the questions. Um, can a new homeowner protest for it for exemption if the appraisal value slash market value is more than the purchase price or the sale price? Will the board consider that case? And do I need to provide additional CMA analysis or et cetera?
I don't know, is Alicia still on? Can you repeat that one more time, Nia?
For a new homeowner, can a new homeowner protest for exemption? I think there's two different things that they're talking about here. I guess protest the valuation, not the exemption, for the appraised value if the purchase price, if the purchase or the sale price is, if the appraised or market value according to the valuation notice is more than what they actually paid for it. And
Yeah,
I hope I'm kind of
if
paraphrasing that correctly.
if I'm reading that correctly, they
Yes,
had a valuation for more than what their purchase price was. They
correct.
simply protest and bring in or provide HCAT with their closing statement showing that what they actually paid for it, and in most cases, they'll get a reduction.
Okay. And then what if some repairs are made later on? Does that potentially increase the value
Mm, repair,
depending on the repairs?
only if they've
If it's done by
not,
the first of the year, no?
yeah, not after the fact. Alicia, are you still on there? Not necessarily after the fact, because if they have, they would have.
She is answering in the chat as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you should still read it aloud though? Because some folks, since I just asked the question,
Sure. I will do
can't
that.
see the chat.
Let's see. Let me get down here. You can actually file what we call a correction, a motion to correct and request to settle at that purchase price. Or if you're hearing, you can bring in your closing statement at your hearing. As far as the whether or not they can bring it in
Process?
after they've made the repairs, uh, those are actually be picked up in the following year. Once they can do that the following year. Once the repairs have been made, obviously when that next January the first rolls around, then that the value is going to change, and that's when they can be picked up.
Okay. I saw a question or something being addressed about a disability exemption. I want to make sure that I go back and refer to the question. Okay, maybe that was it. Okay. Not really
Oh,
answered
and
this
and
about
actually, I saw the second part
age.
of that question, Nia. It says some repairs were made later on, how it influences the value. Um, if it's not generally, it's something they can use to protest, but if it's not where they've made any significant changes as far as square footage or whatever, then the value is just basically going to be based on the previous year's value and what the market has done since then.
Okay, what tools do you accept for CMAs, for comps?
That's one of those where they will accept uh estimates in terms of, so what tools do you accept for comps? That's one of those questions I'm not gonna try to ask, because that's the one type of question that we generally cover in our workshops, in our protest workshops. Um, so I will I can, if they'd like to email me, I can give them some advice, but But generally, that's the kind of thing that our appraisers and analysts will tell you when they once once they start the valuation process in January.
Okay. And I believe that was
There was
it.
one more question that I saw in there.
Is tax deferral only for 65 years of old age? And people with the disability.
I saw something about this. I saw her addressing a question about disability, but I can't find the question.
I've got it. It's right after the what tools do you
Go
accept?
go go ahead, just read it because I can't
If
find
the
it.
tax bill is issued with no exemptions, and then the exemptions are later applied, HCAD has to, that's Alicia's answer.
That's a
HCAD,
different one. Yeah, that was to a different one.
okay, that's a
So
different one.
So the question that I was referring to is, will the bill be adjusted or refunded when you apply for the over 65 exemption and the bill has come out? So we've already started issuing out bills for 2025. Those tax statements have already started coming out since November, so late November. That bill is the statement that is due at the end of January. Now, if you are in the process of going through and applying for your homestead and over 65 exemption, or you have the homestead but you're about to have the over 65 and the homestead, then there isn't going to be a new bill issued out. What's going to happen is they're going to correct the statement, and if the payment has already been applied to the account timely, so if you've already paid your taxes as they're due currently, you would get a refund for any overpayment that you make once those corrections come in. But it wouldn't be a new bill because your bills would have already been paid by then. Your bill would have already been expected to be paid. If you have not paid your statement by the time that correction comes through, and the statement had already been issued and the bill had already been due, and your correction doesn't happen, just for an example, in February, then at that point you would owe whatever the new statement amount is with penalty and interest because you had not paid timely.
Is
So
a tax def Oh, I'm sorry.
that's for whenever your exemptions get applied afterwards. That's what that was referring to. Is the tax deferral only for over the age of 65? And that's age 65 and over, disabled homeowners, over 55 surviving spouses, and disabled veterans are those who can apply for the deferral.
Okay. How about Harris County tax bill 140,000 homestead exemption? Would that will be applicable for 2025?
So
Yes,
that is applicable to the school,
The
not
school
all
tax.
across the board. So I have to really, um, I have to really be clear about that. It is an exemption that is available for the 2025 tax year. So this one we just collected for, and it is in the bills already. So the statement that you're receiving, or that you have received, or that you will receive, includes that $140,000 exemption already in the statement. So that you're not going to get a new correction one with that exemption because it's already been calculated in the bills that we've been sending out. So it's already there. But yes, it is only for the school. It does not apply all across the board. So with Harris County, like we mentioned earlier, we collect for 80 plus jurisdictions. If it's not a school, that exemption is not going to be on there because those exemptions are determined by each particular jurisdiction. So it'll be on there for the schools. It won't be on there for all across the board.
And for some of those folks who get billed for their school bill is separate. It should be reflected on that bill from them directly,
Mm-hmm.
not from you guys.
correct.
Correct.
Okay. Um, 65 and I'll be 65 in 2027. When can I apply?
When you're 65 in 2027, and we encourage you to do so within a month or two of your birthday. It generally takes 30 to 60 days to have that applied to your account. But one thing our exemption department does want you to do is to wait until at least a month or two prior to your birthday to do so.
But does it get credited
It
for
gets
for
credited
the
for the
entire year?
entire year, yes.
Okay.
But remember, pay your statement as it comes out in December, January, the year prior, so that you're able to get a refund once that exemption gets applied to your account. It'll apply for the full year, but just make sure that you've paid it in full when it's due.
No, so say for instance, if your birthday is in July or August, once you apply for it, the bill for the current year is already for the previous year has already been paid.
It's already done
So
and paid for.
when the bill comes out, so what does happen if she? Well, no, never mind. You've already explained that. Okay.
And just to
Yeah, so
reiterate too, if someone is thinking, oh, I'm 67 and I forgot to apply for it when I turn 65, you can still apply and you will get credit for the current year, which is 2025 back to 2023.
So 2 years you go back.
Right.
mm,
Okay.
So don't wait if that's the case to apply.
All right. And is the over 65 in addition to the general homestead exemption, or is that separate? Or is that one
It,
or the other?
it's an
no,
addition.
it's an addition.
So if you're a homestead, then you get the 160, 140, I'm sorry.
140,
And then, yes, and then you get an additional, what was it, 40,000?
60.
Well, thank you
Yes.
very much, Regina. Appreciate that. We take prayers wherever we can get them. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. I believe those were all of the questions that we had. I don't see anything else that was emailed to me. And just want to double check to make sure. Okay, got those addressed already. Um, when the property is in a life estate, does ownership automatically transfer as far as the taxes go? No,
Mm-mm.
no. Okay. All right. I believe that is it. Um, I want to wish you all a safe and happy and prosperous holiday season and new year to come. Um, this is the last presentation for our a month of service collaboration for the year. We will come back again in the latter part of January with just a couple, but we'll start full throttle in February of 2026. In the meantime, as I mentioned before, if there are some presentations or topics that we have not addressed that may be of great importance to you or members of your community, then please feel free to reach out to us and let us know about some suggestions that you all may be interested in or topics for 2026 that you'd like to hear or have us cover. We're going to lots of us are working to do our best to kind of get back out into an in-person session or at least a hybrid session where we are doing Zoom and in person together. So make sure you kind of stay on the lookout for where we're going to be and who's going to be presenting and what areas and so on and so forth. So we definitely want to make sure that we try um, a, you know, to increase the efforts to get back out there in the community. So if your civic association or if your church or something like that has the capability to host a meeting and you guys are interested in having us do a live session from your facility, then please make sure that you reach out to us in that regards as well, that we can see what we can arrange to have to make sure that that happens. Because we know that there's still that technical divide for a lot of people that don't have access to computers or know how to operate Zoom and so on and so forth. And we'd be happy as long as you have the audio visual capability to set up a hybrid presentation at your location, then we'd be happy to discuss that with you guys. So again, I want to thank you all for coming out and for continuing to support this collaboration. It's been an ongoing effort on all of our parts of all of our partners for the last several years. I think since 2017, 2018, we've been doing these presentations collectively. And we want to thank you guys for continuing to support and come back and participate and watch and tune in and share and let everybody know for us the information that we are trying to get distributed out there in the community. We do appreciate you. Again, thank y'all very much. You all have a safe and wonderful holiday season. We will see y'all next time. You can stay safe and take care of yourselves. Miss Mabel, Miss Alicia, Miss Shay, thank y'all very much. again, as part on behalf of the collaborative, thank you all for your partnership as well, and you guys taking the time out year after year to present this information and get it out there to the community. So thank y'all very much. Y'all all take care of yourselves. You stay safe, and we'll see y'all next time.
Wonderful. See you next time. Have a good
All
rest of
right.
your
See
year.
y'all next year.
See you next year.